Hey everyone, welcome back to the Superhero Show. Now this is finally it. We're going to talk about Civil War in a lot of spoilerific detail. I realise if you live in America, you probably haven't seen it yet, well you shouldn't have seen it. Maybe just watch this later.
Yes.
Unless you don't care about spoilers and then find out what happens.
Exactly.
And spoil it for your friends.
But it's out in the UK. How many times have you seen it?
I've seen it, by the time that this goes to air, I've seen it twice.
Okay.
Currently I've seen it once.
I've seen it twice as well. I was nearly going to go see it a third time.
Yeah.
I liked it, and there's a lot to take
It's
in.
very rich.
It's dense.
Yeah, so we're going to digest it slowly for you over the next 20, 30 minutes. First off, should we just initial? Do you think it's a good movie? And where would you put it? I know but everyone's asked me this immediately on Twitter. Where does it rank against the other Marvel movies?
See, I thought it was a really good movie, and then I saw it the second time, and I thought it was a great movie, actually. Yeah. I liked it better second time out. So where's it? It was like maybe my fourth favourite Marvel film when I first watched it. Now maybe it's up there with my other favourites, which are Guardians, Iron Man 3 and Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
It's definitely up there.
It's such a meaty film. I loved it, and I think it's I do think it's a really good Cap 3. I think it brings to a conclusion some of the plot lines and the threads that are really important to his character. It is focused on him, even though it gives a lot of screen time to a lot of characters and gives you good stuff, especially I think on Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Like, his character is fleshed out in a really interesting way, which I'm sure we'll get onto.
And there's some really interesting stuff with the Winter Soldier as well. As you say, it's the story that started at the beginning of First Avenger, and they've seen it through to the end.
And I watched First Avenger the night before we saw Civil War, and it's amazing. Like, Bucky is a bigger part of that film than I remember it being.
I checked it out the other day,
But also Peggy Carter. That stuff is kind of brought to an end. There's the great moment in Winter Soldier when he sees her, and obviously we see her funeral in this movie, so it brings that to a close. Also this feeling of like him being a guy that's never really had a proper life. Like, he's gone straight into the army, been frozen in time. He's this 100-year-old man, alienated from everyone.
Is he a virgin? This was a question that came up at our screening that we discussed at length.
So this is what I thought for a moment, and then I was thinking, you know, the sequence where he doesn't go immediately off to war, and then he's touring around the country with all the dancers.
Okay,
I feel like he's done all right there.
I hope so. If not, that's a long time. So where would you put it then?
I think it's really up there, and I think like it's probably my top 3 or 4.
It's not as tight or as focused as Winter Soldier is.
I still think it's got those kind of strong espionage, mystery, kind of thriller elements about it. Yeah. Because it's got a lot of globe hopping. Like the title cards and there's like flashbacks, and also flashback with revelation, which is a really interesting structural device throughout it. So it's got a lot of intrigue to it still. So it's still got that kind of spy thriller feel to it.
So what did you think when it comes down to the Civil War itself? Could you see both sides of the argument? Because that was something we were worried about.
Yeah.
That Tony Stark, it just wouldn't make sense, him doing what he does, saying what he does, behaving the way he does, and his argument just wasn't going to hold water compared to Cap's argument.
I think they're both really legitimate sides. I think the movie is naturally told from Cap's perspective, so I think maybe the sympathies are directed towards him. But ultimately, I think both are pretty balanced. And also, I think the additional characters siding the way they do add interesting different voices to each side of the debate, because they're maybe not all doing it for exactly the same justification. No. Like Don Cheadle, for instance, he is a soldier already, and he's a superhero, but he's deployed essentially as a weapon. He's doing missions on behalf of the government using superhero tech, and he believes absolutely in this for regulation, but you could say that's because he's a company man. He's been a soldier his entire life. But Vision identifies with that side for a different reason, because he can see the escalation of it all. It's the fact that they exist, there's been a rise. And he has that great speech where he sees like a very objective correlation between the rise in superpowered individuals and the rise in superpowered threats and these incidents. And he can see, even though he doesn't name it, you know, Thanos is what's coming. And that's going to be the culmination of that trajectory he sees. So there's loads of really interesting debates just outside of those two main characters. Like, everyone else has interesting supporting arguments.
But the scenes they share are really powerful, I think. Like, you can see it's a really, you know, I've never been Downey Jr.'s greatest fan, but you can really see the pain etched on his face when he's you know, having these arguments with Cap and with all the other characters. And I thought it was, yeah, I mean, I don't know which side I would pick. I still think I'm on Cap's side, but I thought it really played out in a smart way.
Yeah.
It's an intelligent script.
It really is.
Yeah, lots of clever callbacks, lots of interesting imagery about, you know, the using their hands around the globe and that. I thought it was just strong dialogue.
Yeah, and I think they do a lot with just a few lines that really feel in character for everyone. Like everything, I think you told me this, where they went through the script like for months and months to make sure everything was character consistent. That people were articulating points of views from their side of what they've experienced thus far in that universe. And it does feel pretty natural for the most part.
I just found it a bit tiring a couple of times with them having to manoeuvre characters onto one side or the other. It felt like they were moving chess pieces, but it does make the preamble quite long.
Also just literally around the globe. Like there's a scene where he's like, right, I've got to go get this person and then get him over to Germany. But it's more like
there's a lot of machinations happening that I think they do them in quite a smart, clever way, but it still feels a little bit clunky. I found that build up to get us to that scene on the airport tarmac.
And what a scene that is! Like, is it the greatest superhero action sequence? It's hard to think of a competitor because that sequence for me, it's like. Obviously, they've been building the MCU over 13, 14 films. This is the first film in Phase 3, and you get to that sequence and you go, they've built it. You can have all these characters on screen, you know who each of them are, you know what their powers are to a large degree, and they just have all these great interactions, and the action is smart, it's witty as well, and it propels it forward.
Well, I think the other guy who does great action is Chris Nolan in the Batman films, but it's a different kind of action and it's much more focused. This is just a big battle royale. And I guess in the Marvel universe, maybe the biggest they've had so far was the final sort of half hour of the Avengers. But then it was against this kind of random weird threat from above that you couldn't really get a handle on who or what that was. Whereas this time, like you say, it's characters you care about going at it with each other, and everyone has their moment. It gets bigger and bigger. I think it's paced really well. I think the jokes come in at just the right time. You know, especially I think I was surprised at how much Paul Rudd brings to that sequence.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, we should talk about it in this sequence. Like the thing he does halfway through the sequence, which is they need a big diversion, and he turns into Giant Man. Now I knew about this, and probably a lot of people watching the show knew about this because it was like leaked in some toys. But it still doesn't spoil what a brilliant moment that is in the film and the way he sets it up. I love the fact that he's running across that step. He's hardly moving. He goes, "Well, I could try this thing. It might rip myself in half," and it looks brilliant.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that he really revels in it. He's like, moo ha ha. He's trying to there's a real sense of fun about it.
And it's maybe 2 minutes of screen time, but I think they were really smart the way they dished out the time to everyone. And obviously, you know, Spider-Man we're going to talk about him a bit more, but Spider-Man got a lot of great moments. Yeah. He kind of holds the whole thing together, that whole sequence, I think. Yeah. It's
just a real good balance of spectacle, but also humour as well, because there's so many gags within that sequence, like when he throws the truck and goes, "Oh, I thought that was a water truck." There's just loads of really good gags. And
I think it's going to really help them with repeat views as well, because, you know, I've seen it twice. I want to see it again to watch that sequence again because, like you say, there's so much going on. It's hard to keep up with everything.
And it's not just like senseless. They do a really good job of putting the button on scenes. Like the scene between Cap and Spider-Man, when at the end he goes, you know, Cap doesn't hate this kid. Like, he's just trying to stop him, and he goes, "You've got a lot of heart." And he goes, "Where's you from?" He says, "Queens." And he goes, "Brooklyn." It's just a really nice moment that they share together. Yeah. And it's just pitch perfect.
Yeah, it's just a terrific sequence. It really is. Like, I don't know how long it must have taken them to write that or to shoot that, but it's...
And what I think after watching that sequence, you go, thank God these guys and these writers are doing Infinity War. When you're going to have bigger stakes and more characters, these are the guys to give it to.
The only thing is, the first time I watched it, I felt like it was the high point of the film, whereas that scene you would normally expect to be at the end of the movie, whereas they try and bring it down, you know, and make it a more emotional, you know, the finale being about two friends fighting against each other. But I still kind of felt like that was the point that got my, you know, my heartbeat up the most, and the stuff with Spider-Man. And then when he left the film, I kind of missed him.
Yeah, because he's so good. Oh, let's talk about Spider-Man then.
Let's talk about Spider-Man.
Like, we've known he's going to be in this film for
Yeah.
quite a while now. We got a teaser in the end of the other trailer, but I just think nothing could prepare you for how he is in this film, because he's in two scenes essentially. He's got the scene where Robert Downey Jr. goes and gets him, and then the scene where he turns up in costume as Spider-Man in Germany. Both those scenes equally brilliant. Like I think the scene where Robert Downey Jr. goes to Queens and goes to this tiny apartment and confronts him, like it's so good. Their chemistry on scene is so good, but it's so clever the way that they don't have to retell any Spider-Man stuff.
No.
You're just completely there with them.
Yeah, it's alluded to without them having to state it. And I interviewed Jon Favreau last week for Jungle Book, and he obviously directed Iron Man 1 and 2, and he was saying what he really likes about that scene is you see a different side of Tony Stark.
Yeah.
A completely different dimension to that character. Just, you know that he's going to be friends with this little kid, he's going to look out for him.
And it's still character concept, he's still Tony Stark, but it's just another...
He's flirting with his aunt, isn't he?
And he bins the meatloaf.
Yeah.
Even though he still thinks it's quite good meatloaf, it's still terrible overall in taste. But the thing I really like about that scene is Tom Holland's performance. Like, he's really young, he feels young, feels vulnerable.
Yeah.
But he's also confident. And the strange thing what I love in that scene when he says to him, he's like, why are you doing all this? It's like, well, I didn't play football before, so I can't play it now. And if you have these powers and you don't do stuff, then you're responsible for things that happen. And you can tell he's almost on the cusp of saying Uncle Ben. Like, he kind of wells up a little around the eyes, but then obviously he's talking to Tony Stark, this really famous man, like a stranger in his bedroom. He's not going to open up about this really painful thing that happened to him, which works in the character, but also works for you, the audience, because like, I don't need to hear about Uncle Ben again.
And then it moves on into the action sequence, which, as we were saying, he's kind of the focal point of that. And it really captures the essence of what fun it must be to be Spider-Man, which is something we've talked about a lot about some of these superhero movies, maybe making it look quite a miserable, grim existence. And he's always felt like that it just should be the most fun. Web slinging, and you really got a sense he's having such a good time in that fight.
He's so eager as well, to like, please Mr. Stark.
And it's so easy for him as well. It's easy to him, the power he has.
Yeah, he's easy. Like, he kind of, like, two of these heroes that you've seen, like, just, like, destroy everyone, like Falcon and Winter Soldier, he just makes them look like chumps. The bit where he grabs Winter Soldier's arm, and he's so effortlessly stronger than him. Yeah. And he's just like, this is cool. It just brings such a big smile to your face. And even though this is the 6th time you've seen him on the big screen, it feels really fresh. Yeah, which is amazing that they've achieved that.
He's well written, he's well played, and like I say, I felt like the film suffered when he disappeared, because once he was there, I didn't want him to leave. Yeah. And I can't believe I've got to wait so long to watch blimmin' standalone film now, when 6 months ago I wasn't even interested in seeing another Spider-Man movie.
Do you reckon they bumped that up in the schedule because they just looked at stuff early on, or maybe they just wanted to film with Tom Holland like sooner?
Yeah, I think so. They want to.
Both is like this is going to be good.
So do you think he maybe stole Black Panther's thunder a little bit? Because that's something that we did talk about. Even when it happened, it was like, well, is Spider-Man now going to be taking up some of the screen time that Black Panther had? And potentially, in that scene, should that have been Black Panther doing some of those cool things?
I think Black Panther still has a pretty substantial role in this movie. Like, I don't think you walk away thinking, I didn't get a good look at what Black Panther's about. You see him in and out of suit, he has character moments, he has a moment at the end, he has good action. It's just because Spider-Man is so good and so impactful, and he's just naturally more charismatic and likeable, that he overshadows almost everything in the movie because he's so brilliant.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a thankless task because he's quite a depressed man in this film, isn't he? It's not a happy story for him. And
he's never been he's not the wisecracking character. He is. Yeah. Obviously, there's visual similarities, but he's almost more like a Batman character for the Marvel universe, where he's not going to be making jokes. Like, that's just not his character. And obviously, the Marvel universe is quite wisecracky place. Even lots of characters get decent lines, even Cap. And he gets one, but his line is still pissed off. So when Hawkeye goes, "Hi, I'm Clint, we haven't met," and he goes, "I don't care." Mm-hmm. And it's a good line, it's funny, but it's not him trying to be funny. Yeah. It's him just being a moody sod.
I'm not sure I fully got a sense of who he is, which isn't surprising in a film with this many characters, and they've got to do so much with his character in such a short space of time. But I mean, I guess that's what his standalone film is for. But I
Yeah.
wonder how much they'll then delve into his origin story when we've kind of got something of an origin story, which Jim talked about in our review on the site. Do they need to do much more on that front?
I think the origin story in terms of like what has kicked him into action exists in Civil War. I don't think they need to go back over that at all. And also you've brought that to a huge audience that have seen it. Take that as given. I think they can potter about and relay more information about what it means to be the Black Panther and his powers.
And a bit more of what Wakanda's like.
But I think that's interesting stuff that you'd want to know now you're into that character. I don't think I need to see that scene in the UN from a different perspective again.
No.
I think everyone's seen that, and this movie's going to be huge, so capitalise upon that.
I definitely came out more excited about Tom Holland's Spider-Man than Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther, for better or worse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like he's a much more serious character. Like he's cool, but he's not as immensely likeable as Spider-Man. You just want to spend more time in that character. Although I do like at the end when Black Panther, he's so intelligent when he takes his mask off and he sits beside Zemo and he like hears him out and he does empathise with him and he can almost keep his emotions at bay. Like it's very regal.
Yeah.
Like he's very controlled and he can put all his rage aside and he goes, I'm not going to do, you lost someone too. But then he doesn't let him kill himself. He's like, I'm not done with you yet. So he's still very in control of the situation. I like that.
Let's talk about Zemo then. How did you feel about the film's villain?
So it's interesting they call him Zemo. I think it's cool that they weaved him more into past events. And I think he's more the villain this movie needed rather than a great villain in his own right. Because the problem with this movie is it has to be about the conflict between Cap and Iron Man. So you don't want a villain overshadowing that. The villain can't be conspicuous because they just unite against the villain to stop him first.
Yeah.
So he's kind of, because it's like more like a functional villain.
Yeah, but I found his plan to be quite convoluted to the point that I'm still trying to get my head around it after seeing it twice. And this is why I think I like the film better the second time than the first time, because I was really concentrating on what he was up to when ultimately it was all so reliant on coincidence and people behaving in ways he would predict. But I find those plans a little bit annoying. I think Lex Luthor was similar in Batman v Superman this summer, where I don't know, when I watched it the second time and I kind of knew what his plot had a better handle on it and I just didn't think about it at all.
Yeah.
It made me enjoy the film because I was just concentrating on the character work and the dialogue, which I think is much better than the actual plot.
What is his actual plot? Because I've only seen it once thus far. Is it more a case of he just wants to get to Winter Soldier so he can get the tape of this hit, and he knows that information will tear them apart? And does he just end up tearing them apart along the way?
Yeah, but it's all aiming to get to that place where all the other Winter Soldiers are, but he's not really wanting to go there because he kills them all.
But is that where the file is? The video.
Where the file is?
That's what I thought. I thought that's where the video of the assassination was, because I interpreted it. I need to see it again, and the fact that this isn't clear is obviously a problem.
Yeah.
Is that maybe all he wanted to get to all along was that tape? That was the thing to like put in an envelope and send off to them, and that will just tear them apart.
Yeah.
And the stuff he's done along the way also kind of just set stuff in motion.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
but it's still not very clear.
No, and is that one tape, gonna destroy the Avengers?
You put a lot of hope on that.
Yeah, you are. Obviously it worked because that's how the film wants it to go. But it just felt to me like it was a bit of a stretch. And yeah, I think you're right about he's the right villain for this film.
To be.
But I don't think he was a great villain. I mean, also, we're going to see more of him, though. Is he going to turn more villainous? He's alive at the end. He says that he's just getting going.
Which I think would be cool to have this villain who grows over movies.
Yeah.
Like, we've had Loki a couple of times. I think this universe needs more of those semi-recurring villains. Like, we've had a lot of throwaway ones over the years, because in a lot of the origin stories, it'd be good to have more recurring villains that aren't Thanos in post-credit sequences and Loki.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. Yeah, and I also like the ending, like the fact that, it's intentional, that it's not a city blowing up.
Yes.
There is these two friends not wanting to fight, that it does buck the kind of big third act structure. And it's two men that don't want to fight each other anymore. And it actually ends with Captain America walking away from the fight.
Yeah.
Which is quite a cool way to end the movie.
Yeah, well, you're so emotionally invested in these characters after all these films. Obviously the other superhero movie that came out this year, Batman v Superman, they didn't have a lot of time to make you care about these characters before getting them to fight each other, where, Marvel had the luxury of having 12 odd films where this story has been growing. And so I think it really did have an impact at the end when the two of them are really going hammer and tongs at each other.
Yeah, and that revelation about, like, obviously what Bucky did, and just the emotion of saying, you don't deserve that shield, my father made it for you. Like, even in that sequence, we've seen the scene where he got the shield from his father. Yeah. Like, it's all this. Yes, they've established all these characters, but they've also established Howard Stark over the years with Dominic Cooper and John Slattery in multiple movies. It's like that stuff, they've pulled that in and got mileage out of that stuff, which I guess when it happened at the time, you just thought, it's just a bit of background. Yeah. They've worked that in as well to give it a bit more clout, which is awesome. So good.
Yeah, it's very smart. A lot of care, love and attention has gone into this movie, and you can feel it when you watch it.
I think having the same screenwriters for First Avenger and Winter Soldier has really helped them as well. Like all those little callbacks and stuff, and whether they've always maybe had a dream plan if they were doing 3 movies, just like a couple of ideas they've seeded. It does feel really tight, I think. Yeah,
and I wonder what they've set up here, going into Infinity War. So one thing, obviously, I'm just writing out Easter eggs piece at the moment, which will be on the site by the time this goes live, and. Definitely I feel like they're setting up Scarlet Witch and Vision to have some kind of a romance. They're obviously kind of flirting with each other over a bit of paprika.
He obviously cares for it, very much so.
So I wonder if that's going to be something that tears them apart a little bit, the group, or how that will play out.
So I was also thinking, like, Sokovia Accords. Like, them, like, walking away from this doesn't resolve that. Like, the world's governments still want superheroes to submit to this accords, this agreement where they're regulated and controlled by, I guess, like a UN vote, where they're deployed. And I was looking at the schedule for the next few movies. You don't have to address that in Guardians of the Galaxy. You don't have to address it in Doctor Strange, because I think that probably takes place before these events, and it's going to be, I think, unconnected.
Yeah.
So the next time that you really have to start working through this stuff, we also have Black Panther, which I think will be a bit more unconnected.
Much more Wakanda set.
The next time you're going to have to work through this is the next Russo brothers movie, which is Infinity War. And I wonder if it gets to the point where Thanos comes down and the UN actually goes, they tear that up and go, we just need you, because no one else can do this.
Yeah, it depends how much of it takes place on Earth and how much of it takes place in space, because equally, if they go off to space to fight this war, then you don't really need to worry about it that much anyway.
International waters.
Yeah.
Do what you want, do some gambling.
Yeah.
But like I just feel like there is consequence. Like Captain America, he doesn't have the shield, he's retired. He's essentially given up being Captain America. He's given up being a part of the Avengers. And I wonder what that means for the Avengers lineup, whether Spider-Man will eventually become an Avenger. I'm sure that's something they'll like going forward, maybe not immediately, but setting up this connection and this relationship with Tony Stark. Cap says at the end of the film, the Avengers are always your thing, not mine. Whether eventually we'll get to the point where Iron Man will literally hand over the Avengers to Spider-Man. I think they're setting up a lot of stuff here, and it does feel like it's going to go on.
They're going to need more Spider-Man in their movies, though. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, that deal, and how the Sony films, how similar they're going to have to take place in the same universe. They've already said, I think, there's Tony Stark going to appear in Homecoming.
Yeah, mentor.
Yeah.
I just want more Vision in casual wear.
So just now you've said Vision, it's made me think about the fact as well, it's great to have that scene at the end with the emotional stakes of these guys fighting, but it also means that a lot of characters disappear. Yeah.
Well, at the end, it just kind of funnels down to those 3.
Which is what they had to do, or what they decided they wanted to do, but also I'm never sure how much that makes sense. I wonder where Vision was.
Vision is just back in the house when he goes back playing chess. That's all he's been doing. War Machine, I think War Machine could have died.
Yeah, agreed.
Like,
I bottled it.
I like Don Cheadle, but they could have absolutely just killed him.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have showed that scene in the trailer.
No.
And then just kill him in that scene.
Yeah, that would have been great. We want someone to die in one of these films.
And the
not someone
rest
that's
of the
really
other
old.
characters were all in prison. And then Cap breaks them out. So are they with him in Wakanda as well? Are they all going to be in Wakanda? And it's going to be awkward in Black Panther when Black Panther comes home and they're just all...
Yeah, and he's like, this is supposed to be my movie. You guys have had all your
It's a
movies.
state in here.
But I think that's the problem that comes with having a film with this many characters. It's hard to give everyone a proper arc. And I felt like Visions was definitely one that was left a little open-ended.
Yeah.
But
overall, not a bad job.
You like young Robert Downey Jr.?
A bit weird, isn't it?
A bit weird.
It's good. I do like that technology. I think it's pretty good, but it is a bit weird. Just don't do that anymore.
So yeah, is this going to be the best superhero movie of the year?
What else? We've got Strange yet.
And X-Men.
I keep forgetting about X-Men.
Suicide
That's bad.
Squad.
Oh yeah, there's the other ones we talk about every week.
We're halfway there now.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a contender.
It's the best so far, I think.
Yeah.
Much as we like Deadpool, I think it's the best so far.
Cool. So once you've seen the movie, please let us know what you think of it on the topics we've talked about or anything else. How can they email us, Chris? What do they email?
Superhero show@ign.com.
Easy. And until next week, take care of yourself.